For nearly 2 millennia, the fate of Rome's Ninth Legion has been a black hole in history. They weren't just soldiers. They were the Empire's mailed fist. Then, silence. No victory parades, no monuments, no echoes. Theories abounded, wiped out. In Britain, punished for treason, victims of a forgotten war, all failed, until 2025. That year, AI unearthed a shocking truth in the Scottish Highlands, shattering the Roman narrative. We'll reveal how artificial intelligence cracked a 2,000-year-old cover-up and why the truth is far more chilling than anyone imagined. The Ninth Legion, born for war. To understand their disappearance, you must first understand their legend. This wasn't just a military unit. It was a force of nature. Forged in the fires of Caesar's conquests, the Ninth carved Rome's empire from barbarian lands. Gaul, Spain, Germania, they conquered it all. Veterans, not recruits. Hardened men who laughed at death. Their presence alone could break rebellions. Their reputation was a weapon in itself. But it was in Britain that the Ninth truly made its name. They spearheaded the invasion, hacking through swamps and forests against savage tribes. When Boudica's rebellion erupted, the Ninth bore the full force of her fury. They were ambushed, nearly destroyed, their commander slain. Yet they rebuilt. They hunted rebels. They reasserted Rome's iron grip, the legion that wouldn't die. To Romans, they were heroes. To Rome's enemies, a nightmare of iron and blood. Where rebellion flickered, the Ninth snuffed it out. But greatness breeds expectation. For 2 centuries, the Ninth embodied Rome's ambition, and expectation creates weakness. The silence surrounding their disappearance is deafening. An empire could accept the loss of men, but not the loss of face. Rome marked fallen legions with monuments, turning defeat into propaganda. Teutoburg Forest, a disaster, became a rallying cry. But the Ninth? Nothing. No gravestone, no inscription, no mention. Erased. A contradiction. Their legendary status versus their total oblivion. How does a legion built for immortality vanish without a trace? Unless the Empire fears the truth. The rise of the Ninth was extraordinary, but their ending, a complete erasure. Their celebrated campaigns vanished. It isn't just the loss of men that baffles. It's the loss of memory itself. Rome, obsessed with records, allowed a storied legion to evaporate. The first clues came from mundane paperwork, bureaucratic rosters. Roman officials meticulously tracked legion deployments. These lists were the skeleton of their war machine. But sometime between 117 and 120 AD, Legio Ninth Hispana vanished, their name absent from the records. At first, scholars dismissed it as an error, a missing line in the vast empire, but the absences multiplied. Stone inscriptions, meant to mark construction, stopped. Silence. It was a pattern, an intentional decision. When legions disbanded or merged, the Roman machine left traces, soldiers transferred, honors inscribed, standards preserved. But with the Ninth, nothing. No merging, no reassessment, no honor. Expunged. The silence birthed speculation. Did they perish in Judea? Destroyed in Armenia? Both theories had evidence, but neither explained Rome's silence. Why mourn Teutoburg publicly, but bury the Ninth? The absence of any memorial is the greatest evidence. Memory was power. To record was immortality. To erase, condemnation. Damnatio memoriae, the ultimate damnation, was reserved for emperors and traitors. Could it apply to a legion? If so, the Ninth didn't just fall. They committed a sin so grievous their name was eradicated. But how could thousands vanish with no survivors? Why no traces in other units? And why the silence during the turbulent reign of Hadrian? Some whisper the disappearance was less about military failure, more about politics, a theory that chills with the modern finds. For 1,900 years, the mystery taunted. Theories rose and fell, unable to pierce the veil, until AI penetrated the earth of Scotland, revealing undeniable proof. The greatest ghost story of Roman history was about to get a horrifying ending. The silence wasn't just suspicious, it was deliberate. AI would reveal why. If the Ninth slipped from records, their final footprints must lie on the empire's edge. The last confirmed sighting, Eboracum, modern York. Around 108 AD, an altar bore their name. A simple dedication now, their final marker. Then, the trail runs cold. York was no backwater. It was a keystone of Rome's occupation, a military hub, a fortress for thousands. From here, legions marched north into Caledonia, lands Rome never subdued. Highland warriors fought, with guerrilla tactics using forests and bogs as allies. Roman patrols vanished without a trace. Into this treacherous frontier marched the Ninth. Historians believe renewed disturbances enveloped the northern tribes between 117 and 120 AD. Hadrian, the new emperor, sought to secure his borders. The Ninth, battle-hardened and feared, was the obvious choice to spearhead the campaign. But after leaving Eboracum, no records exist of their return. No redeployment lists, no veterans in other units, swallowed whole by the mists of Caledonia. By 122 AD, just years after the Ninth vanished, Hadrian ordered a vast defensive structure, Hadrian's Wall, not expansion but withdrawal. Instead of advancing, Rome retreated. A remarkable turnaround. Some scholars contend Hadrian knew what happened to the Ninth. The Wall, less territorial possession, more a tombstone sealing off a cursed land. When a legion was lost, Rome mourned with monuments and decrees. Varus and his legions in Teutoburg Forest sparked anguish and rage. But the Ninth? Not a word. Why? An ignominious defeat Rome couldn't admit? Or a strategically advantageous disappearance kept under wraps? Archaeologists searched the Scottish landscape for answers. Scattered evidence, charred timber, burned watchtowers, Roman boot hobnails, fragments of a story. Patrols venturing too far, fortlets overwhelmed. Suspicion grows. The Ninth met a savage end in a frontier war, but no hard evidence. The frontier kept its secrets, veiled in peat bogs and silence. Did they march north and never return? Did survivors fold into other units, their name erased? Did the Senate cover up a disaster? What happened beyond the wall remained hidden until AI peeled back the earth. For centuries, the Ninth Legion remained sealed beneath soil and speculation. But in 2025, the silence cracked. Not by chance digging, but by the precision of artificial intelligence. The discovery came not from a battlefield archaeologist, but from a drone, mapping glaciers and Bronze Age settlements in the Cairngorm Mountains of Scotland. The mission had nothing to do with Rome. A joint team from Edinburgh and the European Institute tested AI-assisted LiDAR, modeling ancient landscapes. On the third day of scanning, the algorithms flagged something extraordinary. Buried, beneath peat and stone, a rectangular anomaly, too perfectly geometric to be natural. Plastered camps are vulnerable when observed from above. These images failed AI recognition filters. They registered no control ditches or ramparts to tally legion outposts. Deep analysis isolated them as desperation point images. AI recognizes what the human eye can't. Patterns crisscross the landscape. Equations for objects provide algorithms. The forensic examination of shields found cracks from blunt trauma, not the elements. The tips of pila were bent, thrown, and trampled. Hobnails wrenched from boots, bodies stripped in haste. Evidence pointed to a sudden, catastrophic assault. They hadn't just disappeared. The Ninth Legion was ambushed, encircled, annihilated. News spread quickly. A draft academic paper circulated. Then headlines roared, Lost Roman legion found, and it died alone. It was an archaeological miracle, confirmation of what many suspected. The Ninth's disappearance wasn't administrative, but apocalyptic. The camp, all that remained of the legion's history, spoke of the legion's end. Hasty ditches, irregular stakes. The legionaries knew they were surrounded, improvising a final stand, not preparing for a march, but preparing to die. That grim realization loomed over every artifact. It was a last camp whose ruins spoke of fear, desperation, and isolation. AI had peeled back 2 millennia of silence, revealing the legion's last heartbeat. But the questions it raised were darker. How could Rome's most disciplined soldiers fall so utterly? Were the Caledonian tribes suddenly strong enough to unite? Or had the Ninth been led there deliberately, abandoned to their fate? The bones of the fallen told a darker story, one of betrayal. The battlefield evidence revealed how the Ninth died, but not why. We must leave the Highlands and step into the marble corridors of Rome, where politics was as deadly as the sword. A chilling picture forms. The Ninth Legion may have been betrayed. The transition from Trajan to Hadrian was turbulent. Trajan, the expansionist, pushed Rome's borders to their limit. His generals thrived. Hadrian, his successor, saw overextension as the danger. His vision, defensive, not expansive. Walls, not campaigns. For the Ninth, who spilled blood for decades, this was betrayal. Recent examination of long-ignored Senate records revealed enigmatic passages. Unauthorized mobilizations north of Eboracum. Expenditure unreported. Explosive implications. The Ninth might have been sent into Scotland without Senate permission. Illegal. The Ninth was maneuvered for political expediency, not military necessity. The Legion became too loyal to Trajan, too resistant to Hadrian's. Consolidation. Traditionalists, veterans built on conquest. If Hadrian suspected they might rally legions against him, they became a liability. In Rome, liabilities were erased. Plan: send them to unforgiving land, far from reinforcements, against an unconquered enemy. If they died, casualties of frontier warfare. If they survived, diminished, easier to incorporate. Either way, Hadrian removed a threat. The intentional silence, the absence of memorials, was the finishing touch. No martyrdom, no rallying legend. Contrast with Teutoburg Forest. 3 legions obliterated. Rome wept and raged. Monuments, disgraced generals, reforms. For the Ninth, nothing. Not neglect, but policy. Damnatio memoriae, usually for emperors, extended to a legion. Politics explained the silence. But the Highland soil exposed the savagery. The Ninth's encampment revealed more than desperation. It exposed the ferocity of their enemies, tribes who turned defeat into ritual vengeance. It wasn't just war. It was annihilation, designed to erase the Ninth from land and memory. Archaeologists uncovered signs of violence beyond conventional battle. Human remains showed sword cuts, spear wounds, and ritual injuries. Skulls with clean puncture holes, as if pierced in ceremonies. Bodies with severed tongues, Celtic mutilation meant to silence enemies for eternity. Limbs broken post-mortem, desecration to strip power in death. A battered Roman helmet wedged in a tree, surrounded by carved runes. Translated, one symbol read, "This is what we do to ghosts who trespass." Romans weren't just invaders. They were violators of the spiritual realm. The tribes denied their bodies passage to the afterlife. The Ninth remained restless, cut off from honor. Weapon fragments showed ornate Celtic carvings. Not a rabble of raiders, but a coordinated alliance. For centuries, Rome despised the Highland, tribes as disorganized. But here was proof of a coalition. They circumvented a legion, isolated it, and destroyed it in a manner unsuspected by Rome. The Caledonians' unity was inspired. Some argue their fight was a holy war. Rome desecrated sacred. Groves outlawed druidic practices, erased native traditions. The Highlands rallied as devotees of a spiritual cause. The execution-type slayings suggest the Ninth's slaying was a sacrifice, most eerie. A piece of the Legion's eagle standard, uprooted, buried upside down, scorched earth around it littered with animal bones. For Roman soldiers, losing the Aquila was worse than death. Defiled in ritual burial, it was the ultimate humiliation, a symbolic slaying of Rome's soul. The Highland tribes didn't just annihilate the Ninth, they erased their existence. Mutilated bodies, desecrated emblems, interred memory. They assured the Ninth's calamity was spiritual, not just military. Rome could never accept such a fate. It involved rejecting their honor, their gods, their empire. But AI didn't just expose Scotland's secrets. It forced Rome's archives to give up their own. The AI-assisted discoveries did more than solve a mystery. They cracked open a silence Rome maintained for 2 millennia. The Ninth wasn't a ghost story, but flesh, bone, shields, and ritual scars. Their rediscovery had consequences. In Rome's time, the Ninth's fate was hidden for pride and politics. The empire couldn't admit annihilation by barbarians. Worse, their destruction, ritual humiliation, desecrated eagle, post-mortem mutilation, represented a spiritual rejection. So Rome chose silence. The Ninth was swallowed by Scotland and the empire's amnesia, but the past doesn't remain seated. With the 2025 discoveries public, the story of Rome's invincibility cracked. Museums altered exhibits. Textbooks were rewritten. The Yorkshire Museum presented a new display speaking of massacre. School children learned the Legion wasn't vanished, but deliberately expunged. The political fallout was sharp. In Scotland, the findings hailed indigenous resistance overcoming imperial might. Nationalist movements made the Ninth a rallying cry. Highland clans succeeded where others failed, destroying Rome's machine and forcing an emperor to build a wall. Military failure became resilience and identity. Scholars launched a renewed archival invasion. Vatican researchers found hints Hadrian feared cultural contagion from the Ninth. The Legion developed dangerous combinations with local auxiliaries, disentangling from the Roman-native dichotomy. The Ninth was ideologically defeated. They adopted or respected customs Rome wanted extinguished, heresy to the Senate, grounds for quiet extermination to Hadrian. Security analysts drew comparisons between the Roman Empire's failures and today's superpowers losing grip in foreign conflicts. Memes circulated in NATO think tanks, dubbing the Ninth an examination of counterinsurgency failure and cultural disintegration. The ancient conundrum became a litmus test for the 21st century. The descendants of Caledonia felt great resonance. The bones spoke of victory for their ancestors. The Ninth's erasure was a reminder of how imperial powers manipulate history. The AI revelations validated that their forebears were agents of history who affected the northern frontier. The Ninth Legion's disappearance was once history's greatest riddle. Thanks to AI, it's now history's greatest warning, betrayed by politics, destroyed in ritual vengeance, erased from records. The Ninth shows how empires built on iron can crumble in silence.